Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Friday, the 18th of November. It's Giovanni van Bronckhorst's 1 year anniversary in the Rangers job. We'll talk about him shortly. He's given an interview to Sky Sports and we'll discuss some of the fallout from that. Before we do so, folks, you can see the little ticker below. We've still got that great offer on the website. Just £1 for 2 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Okay, let's talk Rangers then, lads. Well, first of all, we've got Adam Thornton joining us. How are we doing, Adam?
Yeah, not bad, thank you, Derek. And I have to say I'm enjoying the break a little bit. It's been a weekend and not hating it that we don't have games at the minute, to be honest.
Yeah, I've got to say I go along the same lines as you, Adam. It's a welcome time for a break, I think. What do you say about that, Graeme? How you feeling today? We're talking off air. No Rangers for another 4 weeks or so. Does the break come at a good time for you?
It's just very nice that we can plan a weekend knowing that there's no disappointment to come. Yeah, the break, it'll do for a couple of weeks, won't it? A bit despondent with other matters at Ibrox just now. But yeah, I suppose we'll have to fill the void somehow.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll do our best to do so, folks. Davey Malcolm watching all the way from Tenerife in the sunshine, just rubbing it in there, Davey. Scott Patterson says, it's beautiful here in Falkirk too, so there you go. What's it like where you guys are weather-wise? It is absolutely teeming it down here in Warrington.
Yeah, it's not too bad here now. It's still pretty wet, but not actually raining. I can see a little bit of sky, but other than that, it's pretty cloudy and dreich.
What about lovely Belfast, Graeme?
Cold and sunny morning so far.
Yeah, top of the morning. It sounds like a very usual wintry morning over there. Right, let's talk Rangers. That's why people are tuning in and not for weather forecasts. Giovanni van Bronckhorst is giving an interview to Sky Sports. Folks, we'll bring you all the fallout on that on the Rangers Review website as soon as possible. But some of the big talking points from that, he talks about the injuries and being the current squad. Only 8 players signed during his tenure. But he says it's not an excuse that it's not entirely his squad. He says every player in the squad is my player. It doesn't mean if I have to get new players, then it's my team. That's not my job. From the moment I stepped in that door, these are my players and I work with the players. Sometimes you go and you change things because players are out of contract or we sell them and we have to refresh the squad. But every player is my player. I don't think new managers saying this is not my squad. This is my squad. Talking about is obviously, I think this season, Adam, in particular, it's looked very much like a Gerrard squad, hasn't it, in terms of the amount of injuries that have racked up, asking players to go to the well all too often. First of all, Giovanni van Bronckhorst, a year in the job. It's been pretty much a roller coaster, is it not?
It certainly has. Even when you think back to when he took over and we had, or just before, that Hibs semi-final, and then coming into the Sparta Prague game, where he obviously had a really good win and got us through. It has been absolute highs and lows. You could peg it to highs in the cups, or certainly in knockout football, and probably quite a lot of lows or inconsistencies in the league campaign. To be honest, that isn't markedly different from Gerrard, albeit Gerrard managed to win a title. So in essence, it's been, I would say, pretty similar there. I think the difference, I would suggest, with the Gerrard's first year, if you like, was it was kind of clear that they were building towards something all the time. When Van Bronckhorst is starting at such a higher base in terms of quality and finances, I guess, that the club have and all that sort of stuff as well, then things are going to be a little bit more critical. So that's why I think we're probably seeing a lot of people looking for change. The whole my players thing really I find that really interesting, and we do get caught up in these things and these words. I think sometimes, I don't think any manager in the world has players that were completely signed by him all the time, or certainly it's nowhere near the majority. Managers come into clubs all the time. Managers are dispensable. The players are there a lot longer than managers are. I think that's just a reality. I don't see that as being necessarily a criticism. We can debate whether more players should have been brought in. However, looking at the finances that we've had up until summer there, I don't think it was really an opportunity to bring any more players in. So we could have done better with the money that we had, absolutely. But this, I don't have my whole squad, or I don't have a whole squad. I think that's unrealistic for any manager, to be honest, particularly one who's only been in the job for a year and is obviously working with financial constraints. So I think sometimes we don't help ourselves as fans sometimes when we say that as a negative and we expect them to have a brand new team. Celtic were able to spend 40-50 million and getting basically a brand new team in. We don't have that money. I think that's the fact. So there's always going to have to be a bit of repurposing of players that were there before, or trying to figure out how we can get something else from those players, or bring in academy players. I think that's just the way things are at the minute at the club with the finances we've got and with the age of the players that we still have there.
Yeah, there's a point made here, Graeme, from Denzel. He says, a little dig at Ross Wilson, methinks. Would you go along with that, with what he said there?
No, to be honest. I mean, I thought that when Sky put forward the question, looking back, do you think enough was done in the summer to get you going? Gio was on record previously as, being happy with the business that was done early. I thought in this latest answer, he was a bit evasive in terms of directly addressing the question. And if we can just take it back a step, this is as much confirmation without it being in as many words that Gio is staying. The cliche dreaded vote of confidence isn't coming. That, it could be that the manager doesn't want that public backing as such at the moment. But it also ignores the elephant in the room, which is the seriousness of the situation in terms of this league campaign. A title race that is faltering, that is hanging, by the last thread, with us being 9 points behind. In another one of the answers, he mentioned about consulting with Ross Wilson closer to the window. Yeah. We're almost at the end of November. It's around 5 weeks until the window opens. Surely the business should be planned to the letter already in terms of targets. To be closed in on. Your A, B, and C priority. So, those alarm bells keep ringing for me. It would have been nice, in some way, via channels that the club does have available, to hear something, so it may appear that they're waiting on the AGM to try and, bat away with some justification in their case, what the supporters, shareholders, and others are feeling. But there's still this disconnect at the moment between those in the inside and everyone else on the outside of the club. And that needs addressed, as well as the glaring issues on the pitch, if the club is to move forward.
Yeah. Some of the other takeaways from the interview, as Graeme mentioned there, he did touch on Ross Wilson. He was asked, a number of players are out of contract in the summer. Will the changes start in January, or will the rebuild begin in the summer? He said, I speak almost every day with Ross, and we need to see how my squad is when the window comes closer. In every window, you have to make sure you end the window stronger than you started. You can see what is possible and what we can do. We always want a better squad. And he was also asked a little bit about, looking back, do you think enough was done in the summer to get you going? And he said, we lost some players who were out of contract or on loan, and some players made moves. Joe Rebo and Calvin Bassey both took really good next steps in their careers. And then we had to add new players. We did our homework, had a list of potential new players, and that's when it begins. Is this player available? Can we have them? Is it financially possible to get players at every window? That's the dynamic you have, and you do everything to get players in. We had 7 new players in, and some started really well. Some need more time. I think there's an element of truth in that, Adam. But some of the comments coming in here, with regards to the style of play and what have you. Ian Lamb says, morning guys, apart from the injuries, is the GVB style of play responsible for the poor football at the moment? It's hard to get away from that, really. I think injuries, like, there's no doubt about it. You can point towards injuries and the long-term ones. Rangers, I've never known a season like this where so many players are out long-term. So he has that to back up the current state of play. However, the style of play has been, well, what is the style of play? I think that's what's left many Rangers supporters scratching their heads this season, hasn't it? There doesn't seem to be that sort of stamp on the team that the manager is placing upon them. What's going on? What is the style of play responsible for the poor football?
I would say it's definitely been responsible. I would say injuries, etc., are now cutting in at a time that we really didn't need them. Not that we ever do, but just given how things were going, having all these injuries just makes it so much more difficult. But I think absolutely, even if you look at, we've got a show coming out at lunchtime today on Heart and Hand Tactics Talk, looking at the goalkeepers with myself and Ali. Even if you compare that, you couldn't find two stylistically different goalkeepers than McLaughlin and McGregor in terms of how they play. McLaughlin better with the ball at his feet, McGregor a fantastic shot stopper. The fact that Van Bronckhorst had started with McGregor, then in the summer made a big deal about McLaughlin will be the number one, he's going to start, we're going to play out from the back, we're going to do this, and we did that very well for the first couple of months of the season. Then obviously McLaughlin had those two big games where he didn't do great at all. But then just sort of cast aside, which fair enough, people will probably agree with that, and that's absolutely fine. But when you think about it in a style of play sense, with them back to McGregor, who can't play that style of play, and I think it's all this chopping and changing. I think I've said this before, when it's going well, everyone says such a flexible manager, he's able to adapt to every other team. But then when things just change seemingly at random, and I know it's probably never at random, there's context and things that we never know about in terms of player personalities, player suitability, all that sort of stuff. But when it changes and when things change so drastically, another example would be going with Kamara as a number 6 and then having a terrible day at Parkhead in February and changing to Lundstram and Jack as a sort of sitting physical midfield too. Those are big tactical shifts that don't necessarily make sense in terms of an overarching technology. It just sort of screams of not panic, but reacting to a situation and then just trying to be more cautious after that situation, rather than maybe having a bit of belief in your approach. You look across the city, and I hate doing it, but you look across the city, the way that they set up away in Europe or whatever can seem reckless, but it's consistent with how they play domestically. It's a style that they adopt and they adhere to, and we can have a laugh about how they can't defend and this and that at those high levels, but they have a trust in a system and they go through rigidly. That's what they're going to do. We can debate whether that is acceptable for us or not, but I think that's quite two pretty clear examples of the differences. So I would say domestically, I still think we're way too cautious, as we were under Gerrard for quite a bit of time as well. So again, it's not a criticism of Van Bronckhorst specifically, but the lack of quality that we have now, or the lack of players that are on form, such as your Morelos and your Kents, Kamar Roof up top, even Defoe chipping in with goals, etc. We don't have that breadth of quality in the final third now, and I think when you are cautious and you need someone to sniff those half chances out or have a Morelos on form, I think we're seeing that we're kind of sadly lacking there.
Yeah. Interesting point that Adam makes it there, Graeme, and I wanted to ask you this as well. This point from Graham Morrison, he gets in touch. Morning, guys. Would winning both cups be enough to keep Gio in the job, even if the league is lost? Or does he go at the end of the season no matter what? Say, in talking sake, 9 points are overhauled, effectively 10 with the superior goal difference that Celtic have. If somehow he manages to overturn this, Graeme, is it style of play and the entertainment factor a big thing for you? Do you need to see a lot more with your own eyes as opposed to winning football?
Rangers is a club built on winning. It's what runs through our DNA. It's what the demands are. It's what is expected. In terms of entertainment, to an extent, yes, the play could be a bit better on the eye, but through Walter Smith's legendary time at the club over 2 spells. Entertainment was in short supply a lot of the time, but there were teams who knew how to get the business done, how to be involved at the business end of the season when you lift the big shiny silver things, and that's what matters here. In terms of that poser about, hypothetically, would 2 cups be enough? On paper, you probably could make the argument, but in reality, we're coming up to a very tough period, even ahead of the New Year game at Ibrox. If any further points are dropped, ahead of January the 2nd, and then that game, goes very badly, even in terms of a loss, if we put up, a challenge or such, maybe like the 2-1 game last season, it will just intensify the pressure. I just can't see 2 cup wins, coming in isolation, to the league campaign that would run all the way through it. More worrying for me is, what's happening around the performances in terms of, terrible form from players, Gio and the coaching staff not being able to inspire or evoke, form from these players. There's a despondency on the pitch as well as off it. So that's now 1 year today since the appointment. How many players has the manager improved significantly to a higher level? The likes of Scott Wright is a very frustrating figure for me. He came in the Hearts game, provided energy on the right wing, done all the right things, did what we needed to as an impact sub. He gets the shirt the following game from the start against St Mirren, and he was largely anonymous. Things like that are ongoing. I would go along with Andrew there, and none of our players have improved in reality. Set against that is the nature and the makeup of this squad, which is generally past its peak and it's on the downward curve. Gio can speak about these players being his players all he wants. Yes, he's responsible at the moment, but it's very much the team of the Gerrard era. The man sitting with us, wrote a book in terms of the tactical blueprint. Adam could wax lyrical all day about how those players were drilled, how they were molded into the system. Glenn Kamara is the perfect example. But now, he's a figure almost cut adrift. Strangely, there was real interest in Kamara in the window just passed in the summer, but Gio wanted to hold on to him, in hindsight especially. Why did he do that? Given the evidence up to that point and what we have seen since, typified again in the St Mirren game last week. I don't like being so pessimistic and negative, but I'm not going to insult what I've been seeing, what the viewers have been watching, over the last year. It is right that we should look back on the previous year and acknowledge the high points and what Gio has done for the club. The Europa League final was massive in terms of profile, prestige, and it was thrilling. The red was great. The Scottish Cup win ended up a long hoodoo in terms of domestic trophies. So those are plus points. However, a Rangers manager is judged on the competition, on the league race. As it is, there are 2 significant black marks against Gio's performance in last season and this season's title race. That can't be sustained. So I don't know. We need answers, but we need evidence from the club that we have something to believe in, something to get on board with. More of the same just won't cut it. And I fear that is the inevitable that is waiting on us at the other side of the break.
Yeah, so some of the comments coming in about improving players. Blue Cafu says, "Is Gio not getting the credit for Lundstrom? He did have an upturn in form, of course. In the second half of last season, he has been poor. Not the only one that's been poor this season." Andrew Gill says, "We really pretend Bassey didn't go from a nobody to an elite European defender under Gio." I think, those, especially Bassey, is the outlier, Adam, in terms of improving players. But Graeme's point about looking at that squad at the moment, there's not many that you think that have been improved in the last 12 months. Is there any that you can think of?
No, I think Bassey's the only one.
Yeah.
Lundstrom, you could argue has had peaks and troughs. There certainly, I wouldn't say there was a tremendous improvement. Now he had a good few months. Morelos had a good few months, etc. But no, I would say overall, there isn't that there. And I think that's a little bit, that's the big thing for me, I think, because, like I said, a manager is going to be temporary, unfortunately, in the modern world. They have to come in and they have to be improving players that are there. You can talk about we're playing too many games. You can talk about, we've got the European run, or we've got injuries, or whatever. But we need to see some sort of improvement in there. And it's on players as well, don't get me wrong. If we've got players that are running down their contracts, maybe don't want to give their all because they're looking at their next payday, etc. All these type of things can factor into it. But I think definitely I would say, if you look at that in isolation, there are not many players there that you could say are markedly improved from the last year, or from the last couple of years. I would say it's very, very complex. I'd say he's been dealt a bit of a tough hand. And if we're looking at it in a kind of balanced way, the board are possibly thinking, he's had some financial constraints put on him. He's brought in a lot of money. We know that the shutters came down during or post-COVID, and there wasn't any money to spend for, 3-4 transfer windows probably, when you factor in January as well. I know we probably spent a bit on Ramsey and Diallo's fees, which you could argue were big mistakes. But overall, there hasn't been money. This is the first window where there has been money to spend. So he probably has been dealt a raw deal there. I still think most of the transfer window in the summer was good, or will become good. Whether it was the best, whether money was spent in the more pressing areas, I don't agree. If we still don't have Yilmaz up to speed by now, and we spent 5 million on him, should we have bought a central midfielder who could come in and make an impact before that? Yeah. Probably, but overall, I think Yilmaz will come good. So there are wee bits there that you can debate about. I do think he has been dealt a tough hand, and maybe that's what the board think. We'll stick with it and see. Personally, I've said a couple of times, even from February, March time, I didn't feel like the style that we had on the go was enough to win a league. Now, players can absolutely change that. You bring the right players in and they can transform something and just end up getting that. So we'll see how things go. Back to the 2 cups argument. If he wins 2 cups, which, let's be honest, is pretty realistic. He's shown he's decent in knockout football. Yeah. It's not out with the realms of possibility, but for me, I would really need to see more of a clear style. We're going into this 6 months with a lot less games than we have done in the last couple of seasons. We've got a chance to get on the training pitch, get a couple of proper training days in a week where it's not rest or recovery or preparation for something else. I'd be looking to see them coming out the traps flying from, maybe not when we come back after the break because we'll still have a number of injuries, but from sort of January onwards when we've got the transfer window, you really want to see a couple of signings coming in that are going to improve the first team and just see a clear plan, what we're trying to work towards. If we are keeping the manager, and that's what they're saying, and that's a long-term ambition. I'm sure if we don't hear about it in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure we have to hear about it at the AGM. If that is the plan, then they need to back him financially. Ross Wilson needs to make sure that they're collaborating and getting the right type of players, but we also need to see evidence of work on the training pitch in terms of how we go out and play. There needs to be more Aberdeen at home type performances and a lot less St Mirren away or Livingston at home performances. I think the excuses that or the reasons around injuries, games, etc. goes away as soon as this break finishes, because we are just in a 2-game-a-week cycle rather than 3. Yeah,
absolutely. Graeme, we've got a piece on the website this morning from Stevie Clifford. He's basically saying that the board should come out and either and give the supporters an update on the manager's situation, pretty much a vote of confidence, because it looks like they are sticking with Giovanni van Bronckhorst as the manager. Andrew Webster comments, "Hi Andrew, if that is what the board think, they need to publicly back him now or sack him." Would you go along with that? Would you like to hear from the board and with the plans for Giovanni van Bronckhorst, just to, I guess, put it to bed that this speculation and rumour about his future?
I just don't think that's going to happen. It's, we've seen it before. It's almost a curse. If the club come out and say, the manager is staying. I would look to read more between the lines with this splash from Sky this morning. An exclusive on Gio's first year in charge. I would say there's next to no chance that the club are going to sanction that interview and those questions, which has obviously been, recorded in the last couple of days. To go out this morning on the anniversary, then next week or the week after, suddenly the the plug's pulled from underneath him. So that's not going to happen. There could have been input from the manager in that maybe he doesn't want the minutiae of his position being under the spotlight. And who are the club going to let sort of ask those very pointed questions, given all that's going on at the moment. So certainly I would like to hear of some vision from the club in terms of what the plan is going forward. Adam raised some good points there, in regards to finance for the squad and issues that Gio has been dealt. And yes, there is merit and truth in that. There are the issues with the squad that are there that I mentioned earlier. And, this pattern of losing a lead last season, shipping 9 points already. So, we need to see something on the pitch. It's okay giving the manager more time, but I've said, and as have others, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. So as much as I would like to see a different style of play, I don't know if that's going to happen. So, but something has to give. If it's not in the short term, are the board really going to allow, hypothetically, a 14, 15 point gap to set in, say before the split, and then to try and paint a picture over the summer? That would be a very hard sell for me, but certainly at latest by the AGM. So it'll be 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks next Tuesday until the AGM. There really needs to be something, in terms of meaningful dialogue, in terms of what is happening and what the plan is, because there are just far too many questions rather than answers at the moment. It's a very uncertain time, and although I disagree, I can see why, to an extent, why the club are sticking by Gio, where they're not wanting to change. A big part of it is financial. It'll cost serious money to remove Gio and his background team, for one. But it's a gamble at the same time. If more points are dropped, and if we take another loss in the January Old Firm, then what? Who's responsible? Who's accountable? What happens next? So we very much need to hear the plan and what the steps are going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, that's for sure. You're going to say something there, Adam?
I was just going to say, I think as far as the fan base are concerned, I think the damage is probably already done. You'll get. It's realistic that we can beat Aberdeen, beat Hibs, beat I think is it Motherwell coming up, but then a defeat in the Old Firm game. Every time there's a defeat or drop points now, I think it's going to be treated like the end of the world, regardless of if we string a run of 3 or 4 games together. I think the support is too far gone, in my in my opinion. On that side, it's just going to be confirmation bias every time something happens. The only way I think that can be saved is not necessarily a title win, because I think that's very, very unrealistic now, but coming out, for example, and smashing out a 10-15 game winning run, beating Celtic home and away, for example, something like that, to maybe give some sort of credit or some sort of heart that yes, this can be achieved, and maybe next season we move into next season and see how things go. But it would need to be something, I think, quite extreme in that sense to really bring the support back on it, which is quite damning.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Right, folks, that'll do us there. Adam, if people want to hear more from you, how do they go about doing so?
You can get me on Twitter at Adamski152, and I've got a couple of shows out every week on Heart and Hand, patreon.com/Heart and Hand.
Super stuff. And Graeme will be writing a few things for us today on the Rangers Review site, folks. Just a reminder, if you want to take advantage of all the content on there, head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Just £1 for 2 months worth of content. Absolutely cracking deal we've got on just now. Okay, chaps, thanks very much for joining us. Enjoy your weekend without any Rangers to dampen your week. But yeah, of course, World Cup starts on Sunday as well, if that's your thing, if you're watching that. What a game to kick it off, Qatar against Ecuador. It doesn't get much better than that, folks. So yeah, that kicks off on Sunday. We'll be back again on Monday. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Friday and your